Recording again here. All right, my guest is Jonna Bianco. She's president and founder of the ABF. Are you making some progress here? Are these people going to be refunded, or are we seeing I mean, we're talking about this whole banking scam. Excuse me, the fiscal problem of the United States. You know, we had an outgoing president that handed the bankers $2 trillion. What's the situation in this country? Is the Federal Reserve the problem? Is the International Monetary Fund the problem? Is there somebody trying to, behind the scenes here that are trying to stir up a war with China so they really won't have to pay us back?
I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, our politicians need to literally just take 10 minutes of their time to understand this issue and then get a backbone and stand up against it and hold China accountable and unite together in resolving this issue. ABF is confident of getting this issue resolved in light of all the problems that exist here in our country and our legal system. At the end of the day, justice will prevail, and ABF is a firm believer in the wheels of justice. They may turn slow, but they do turn. And the key to success is making this issue an issue. I've always viewed Washington, D.C. and as a fire and rescue center. Things don't get resolved, things don't get fixed unless there's a fire. And ABF's job is to create that fire. The American people's job is to create that fire. In order for Washington to send that rescue squad to put that fire out and resolve that issue. And that's the only way this issue is going to get resolved, is if the American people stand up and say, China, we're not going to take this anymore. We'll stop buying your goods. I guarantee you, if the American people stop buying China's goods, China would go bust. They'd go belly up. They depend on American people buying their products, even though those products may be defective and may have problems with them. As we've seen over the many, many years. But without the American people buying China's goods, they couldn't survive. So we need to send a message to China. We're not going to be good to you anymore unless you start being good back to us. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. And send that message to Washington. Hold China accountable. No more double set of standards. No more double set of rules. We pay our debts. China, you need to pay your debts. And as American citizens, what happens if we don't pay our debts? We get bad credit ratings, we go into bankruptcy, so on and so forth. China is no different. The laws for countries are no different than they are for the American people. The difference here is China has always enjoyed a double set of standards. And they've been given all of these protectionary measures to not have to abide by these laws and these rules and regulations and avoid this issue because our government has never said to them, China, you've got to pay your debt. China, you've got to pay your bills. You need to come to the table and negotiate resolve of this issue. And that's truly what it takes at the end of the day. China's gotten away with this all these years because they've not been told they have to fix this issue. With the exception of in 1983, they were told they got to resolve this, and they fired off a scathing letter to the U.S. Department of State, a full-paragraph letter, which is referred to as the 1983 China Aid Memoir. That was a very threatening letter to the United States, threatening all kinds of economic issues, trade issues, war issues. If the U.S. Department of State did not hold their people in line, talking about the bondholders trying to collect on money that's owed them, and that they would hold the U.S. Department of State responsible, and that the American people in the U.S. would suffer the consequences if they were forced to have to honor this debt. Instead of taking a position to China, well, gosh, China, this is a debt you owe, and that you need to pay, the U.S. State Department stepped in and as a friend of China, and provided all sorts of protectionary measures to prevent American people from being able to continue to push and collect from China. In 2006, China issued a letter that absolutely said, we will not pay these bonds, and that was signed by their Minister of Finance back to the U.S. Embassy, which is considered selective default. if the U.S. government or any other country out there that's facing these sovereign debt crises who said we can't service our debt, immediately their credit rating is downgraded, they're placed under selective default, and the same needs to be done to China. China, again, enjoys unfettered access to U.S. capital markets. They have incredible trade with the United States and the global community that they rely on to survive on. And at which time that people stand up to them, our administration, our government, our Congress stands up to them, and the American people. And to China, no more double standards, you've got to play by the same rules, then this issue will be resolved. And if the American people who are outraged over our debt ceiling continue to go through the roof, could only realize that we could reduce our debt ceiling by nearly $1 trillion or more to resolve this issue. And that's letting China off the hook cheap. If China only settled this issue at 30 cents on the dollar, which, mind you, we pay 100 cents on the dollar. But if China only settled this issue at 30 cents on the dollar, this issue could be resolved globally, American bondholders could be made whole, and which would additionally create a surplus that could provide an economic stimulus to every state across this country in the billions of dollars. That is money owed to begin with by not raising taxes, by not creating stimulus programs that could help promote our economy, promote jobs, and get this country back on track. And it's just a matter of our congressional leaders standing up and saying the buck stops here. No more double set of rules for China. We're going to uphold existing rules and laws and regulations that are established on our books and hold China accountable. And that's really the answer at the end of the day.
Now, I've been doing stories on this whole New World Order plan for 25 years. Ever since I heard George Bush announce that now we can see a new world coming into view. Now, if I remember Khrushchev pounding on his desk with his shoe at the UN, telling him how they were going to take over here, and it looks like they have to me. I mean, this whole deal with China, and with our own congressman, our own government failing to stand up and defend the American people and protect their money and basically call to task and chastise somebody that we're certainly, they've certainly been promoting the fact that we might have a world war with China. This looks like a concerted effort by these New World Order, I call them one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, for the banksters, to rip off and to siphon all of the income from Americans. I mean, Walmart's is what every product made in Walmart is from China. I mean, why aren't Walmart's carrying American-made goods? Is this part of a plot?
It's funny you mention that about Walmart, because if you remember back when Walmart was first starting, the American people got behind Walmart hugely because they promoted in America, for America, the American way, American-made products. And that's why America got behind them. And that lasted a very, very short time until they got their feet on the ground. And then they jumped ship and everything went to China for cheaper products, cheaper made products that could put American people out of business. I mean, look at the Walmart stores in general. Every time they move into a local neighborhood, all the regular grocery stores and the local community stores, they all shut down. They get driven out of business. Compliments of China. And so that's what we see happening. And the American people in general, for the most part, are too busy keeping up with the Joneses, as I call it, and don't really see what's going on around them until it starts hitting home or hitting them in the pocket financially, and then all of a sudden they're outraged. What is going on? How did this happen? Why aren't we doing something about it? And so we need to get the American people involved, because this is a direct effect on them, their children, their grandchildren, because it's a direct effect on our debt ceiling.
Well, let me ask you something. Now, you've been on special guest put us together, and I really appreciate them doing that. But have you gotten this information out on AM or any of your clear channels controlled?
We just started last week working with special guests on other radio stations and getting this message out. The ABF has, if you go to our website, it's www.americanbondholdersfoundation.com. There are 3 videos on there. One's a slideshow presenting some of these bonds so that people can see what we're talking about. And then there's what we call an interview. And on that interview is the former Secretary of Education, Brett Bennett, the former Director of International Economic Policy, National Security Council during the Reagan administration, Mr. Roger Robinson. There is former Undersecretary of International Affairs at the U.S. Treasury, Mr. John Petty, myself, Peter Husey, Brian Kennedy, President of the Claremont Institute, Norm Bailey. You will see all the people that are part of this collection effort and part of the ABF that we call our ABF team talking about this issue. And so if you take less than 8 minutes of your time to look at that video, and in the overview video, which has the Honorable Dick D'Amato, John Hallam, former Undersecretary at the State Department during the Clinton administration, Al Fromm is on there. You will see their statements as well. So it's a bipartisan effort of both Democrats and Republicans calling for the government to hold China accountable. And now that the Congress has issued a letter to the GAO for government holdings, see, at the end of the day, Congress, even though they've been somewhat supportive, different ones of them, it's not been a priority with them. They kind of view this, well, why should we care about 20,000 bondholders? We've got a lot of other issues to deal with for millions of American people. So it wasn't a priority. It didn't become a priority until they realized, wow, the U.S. government's holding these too. Now we're talking 300 plus million American taxpayer citizens that this directly affects. And so now all of a sudden they've awakened to this issue and are paying attention to this issue, and it's getting out there more and more. And we anticipate it being on other radio talk shows. I know we've done probably 20 or so, 25 or so in the past week, 10 days, and we'll be doing many, many more that's scheduled forthcoming, so that we can let the American people know about this issue and awaken more and more members of Congress to the importance of this issue bipartisanly, in hopes that the current administration recognizes the importance of this. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to, is the U.S. government forgiving $1 trillion of debt owed to America? And that's our message. Because by them not acting and not holding China accountable, in essence, that is what they're doing. And so that's the question that the American people need to be asking. As well as our bondholders. Is the U.S. government forgiving $1 trillion of debt owed by China? And I don't think that's going to go over well with the American people in light of the economy, in light of the unemployment situation in this country at ceilings that's going through the roof, when it doesn't have to be that way, and it can be changed. But it requires this issue to get the attention that it duly deserves, and for the American people to stand up and say, no more. Not today. It stops now. And notify their congressional leaders about this issue, and send them to our website, write them letters, and you just have to get their attention and make it a priority.
The way things are happening now, it seems like it's happening just exactly the way I've warned people that it would happen. What happened in Soviet Russia? They killed 60 million white Christian Russians when the communists took over, and how many millions of people did they kill in China to get this communist-style government set up? And we helped, didn't we? We helped Mao Zedong rather than Chiang Kai-shek.
Well, I think with regards to the 1938, 39, and 40 bonds issued under U.S. dollar-denominated currency that the U.S. government bought the majority of and are still holding, as one Treasury official quotes, for a rainy day. You know, and I want to say to Treasury, look out your window, it's a tsunami out there. But I think that, in essence, that was the U.S. government's way of trying to help the Shanghai Shek regime by enabling them to issue more bonds and create the financial ability to help shore them up to keep from losing against the Japanese invasion, which in essence actually did work. They lost, of course, to the communist regime a few years later, which then became the People's Republic of China, which is who owes the debt. So I think in that regard, the U.S. government actually did step in, intervene, and try to assist in that effort. But once the communist regime came in, the U.S. government has just simply ignored this issue over the many years and have not held them accountable. And I think the one thing to realize for people, some people are like, oh my gosh, this is 100 years old. Well, it's actually not 100 years old. It may have been issued 100 years ago. Some of these bonds are, 70 years ago, 80 years ago. But this is long-term debt, no different than U.S. Treasuries that are 20, 30, 40, 50-year long-term bonds that people buy. People can buy a U.S. Treasury bond that's 50 years long, which means it'll mature 50 years from now. And in the meantime, throughout that 50 years, you keep collecting interest payments. So these bonds are no different. And so I think that's another message. People get very confused when they see it, thinking, oh, that's so old, we should just forget about it and move on. Well, does that mean that 50 years from now, people need to just forget about U.S. Treasuries, or 20 years from now, or 30 years from now? We should just forget about any U.S. Treasuries that people have bought because, golly, that was old, that was a long time ago. Let's just move on. Because for the most part, everybody looks a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. Nobody plans like countries do or governments do for long-term stability, long-term no issues that last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Has China been set up to drain the U.S.? I mean, I still have questions about who won the Cold War. Us or the communists. And I keep hearing James Forrestal talking to McCarthy. McCarthy said something about the people that were attacking him being stupid, and Forrestal said, no, consistency's not the mark of stupidity. If they were just stupid occasionally, they'd make a mistake in our favor. And what I see, what everything that you've described here, we got foreign countries that owe money. We are supporting over 150 countries with foreign aid. We're basically financing the whole
and countries that do not consider us an ally. That's for certain. And at the end of the day, China gets aid from the United States. They get government foreign aid for a multitude of reasons and projects when China owes us all of this money. I appreciate coming on your show today, and I appreciate your efforts in promoting this issue to the American people so that they are aware of it. Because when they do become aware of it, it angers them, and they want it changed. They want it stopped. So it takes that united front. So we're very grateful for that.
Well, the whole thing is, I started the Free American magazine and radio show back in 1994 after what happened to Waco. I said, this isn't Tiananmen Square. This ain't Red China. By God, we got to do something about this. I will never sit back and watch something like that happen on television again. And what I'm watching on television, they're not telling us this. They're not telling us this. And the news is so controlled. The American people are so controlled. The education system is so controlled here that the American people don't know what's happening. They don't know that their government is not working for their good. There's 190 countries in the world, 192 I think, And we're giving foreign aid to 150 of them, including Red China, including Libya, including Iraq, including Israel. I mean, that's insanity to me. Why are we doing that? We're just taking the American people's money and giving it out to anybody that's going along with the whole one world globalist international monetary fund scams that they use to go in and take over countries like Argentina, like in South America.
Well, you know, there's an Argentina debt collection that's going on still with their bondholders from the Argentina debt default that they're still working on, and it does seem to be making progress along the way. And just as the ABF is continuing to make progress on this issue, until there is justice is served for the American people and our bondholders, and this issue is paid for and resolved and China has come to the table. So I think, again, it's a matter of informing people, letting people know about this issue, and getting their support and involvement in this issue to tell their congressional leader in both the House and the Senate, no more double standards for China. Hold them accountable. And that's what people need to do to resolve this issue. But you're right about the media. I mean, at the end of the day, media is controlled by their stockholders, and those stockholders are becoming more and more and more foreign, which controls the agenda, which controls the message, which controls what they're allowed to say, what they're not allowed to say. And so the American people are not informed or educated on the reality of what is truly happening within our country and globally.
You know, I've tried to bring that out. I mean, and I use their words. I mean, I've taken the Council on Foreign Relations, and it's really happening now. Matter of fact, I've just put up some more links on my site. There is now there's over 8,000 people on a government watch list. You don't even know if you're on it. You don't know what you've done. You may not have done nothing. Somebody could have called Homeland Security and said, well, I think this guy's a subversive. And suddenly you're on a government watch list. Now, I've been on one of those government watch lists almost since I started the Free American on this radio show. They have tried to kill me. They've tried to stop me. They bought my ISPs. They bought property that I was working on and trying to build on. And basically stolen it. They've and this whole thing, the FBI is behind this. Now I've had one guest on that calls it gang stalking, but what we're talking about is the Homeland Security basically telling the FBI they can go out and harass anybody if they got a Ron Paul sticker on there.
Well, I can't speak to that, to be honest with you. My focus is the upholding existing laws within the United States and holding China accountable for their debts and financial obligations to American citizens and to the U.S. government.
Okay, now to do that, don't we? Do we have? What about the courts? Now we're supposed to have three branches of government. If Congress has turned you down, and obviously the president's not going to talk to you about this, what about the courts?
The Congress isn't turning it down. As I said, I've testified before Congress in the past in Congressman Brad Sherman's committee and in Chairman Henry Hyde's committee in international relations and foreign affairs. There's been multiple resolutions issued out of the House and the Senate specific to this issue that's been co-sponsored bipartisanly by many members of Congress. So I can't say that Congress is ignoring this. Many members of Congress are ignoring it, but there are several that do support this issue, and the support is growing every day and gaining speed, gaining momentum. And we have, spoke to the Bush administration previously. We've been ignored by the current Obama administration, but we think that will change. As I said, if it doesn't change, then clearly the message being sent it is that the U.S. government is fully intending on forgiving $1 trillion of debt owed to the American people and the U.S. government. But I believe that as more and more of them understand the issue, Congress is no different than we are. We have very busy lives, and they're facing many, many issues, and it's a matter of getting that time with them for them to understand the issue and move forward on it. And because they're very careful on any and all issues that they get involved in, and it takes a lot of time for them to vet through it and understand it before they jump out there and support something, because we live in a society of attack, attack, attack. And in many instances, they're fearful of making an error or making a mistake that they're crucified for by the mainstream media, because that seems to be the intent of our media these days, is to go on attack against our politicians and people that were elected into office. Instead of, you don't see anything positive on the news of things that they've done good. You only see the negative and the bad. But the attention with regards to the collection of this debt, more and more of them are waking up, more and more of them are getting involved and taking an active participating role to resolve this issue, and firmly believe that China needs to be held accountable. And so we're seeing that grow. And the more the American people get involved and support the issue, the sooner we will be able to resolve this issue. This is a presidential election year. I don't think it would look very good for the current administration in front of the American people if the headlines ran stating, Obama administration forgives $1 trillion of debt of China owed to the American people.
I'd be willing to bet that don't go in. All right, we're out of time here, dear, and I want to. You're certainly welcome to come back anytime. Let people know about this, and let them know about my show.
We look forward to keeping you updated on our progress, because we are making continual progress on this issue.
All right.
And are confident of our success. And thank you for having me on your program.
The recording has been completed.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, Richard.
I have a question for you.
I could not get in. I'm still hooked up to all the other stations, though. So let me end them. Hang on a second. Okay, it's okay. I don't know. Maybe I was hooked up there. I don't know. Was I hooked up? I ended the call.
Now, let's take this one step at a time. Question: when you connected with me, did you mute my sound?
No.
Well, I gave you a full 5 minutes after the top of the hour for sound to come through on your connection. You were connected, but there was no audio coming through whatsoever. So I put on alternative stuff instead.
Okay, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, man. I called and then we were hooked up, and then I had to reboot, and when I rebooted, I couldn't get back on again. I tried, and I even tried calling you on the cell, and I couldn't.
That explains it. If you had to reboot, of course, I needed to push the button to kill it. You were getting a busy signal.
Yeah, well, the thing just crashed. My computer's been locking up. I think somebody's been hacking it. I don't think Homeland Security wanted anybody to know about this Chinese debt.
Well, oh boy, I don't know what to say about that, but that explains why it didn't work. Today I'm going to try to get the Telos One people to tell me what jumpers to use to make this thing disconnect after X amount of silence or something. I don't know. What we got here is a lack of VoIP to interface with POTS. That's the issue.
Well, I hope you get it worked out by Monday, and we'll try this again.